My phone buzzed against the cold marble at 2 in the morning, shattering the silence of our Chicago penthouse. It was Sarah, a nurse whose nursery I had designed. She whispered that my husband had just rushed a patient in and I needed to come to Memorial immediately. Nothing prepared me for what I found behind the emergency curtain. There was my perfect husband, tightly gripping the hand of his boss's 19-year-old daughter. My name is Morgan, and at 34 years old, I thought I had constructed the perfect life just as meticulously as I designed the interiors of Chicago's most exclusive residences. The rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of our penthouse, a violent contrast to the stillness inside. I swirled a glass of Pinot Noir, the rich crimson liquid catching the dim light. Grant was supposed to be landing in New York for a weekend conference, and I was enjoying the rare solitude. I checked the time on the microwave. It was 2 in the morning. Our marriage of 8 years was a masterpiece of public perception. Grant was 36, the youngest chief financial officer in the history of Vanguard Holdings. He was the man who opened doors for me, the man who remembered anniversaries with diamonds, the man who looked at me with what I thought was adoration. We were untouchable. Or so I believed until the phone vibrated against the marble island, the buzzing sound drilling into the silence. The caller ID flashed Sarah, Memorial Hospital. My stomach tightened. I had designed a nursery for Sarah pro bono last year when her husband lost his job. She owed me nothing, yet she was risking everything to make this call. Morgan. I know the HIPAA laws. I know I could lose my license. Sarah's voice was fracturing on the other end, breathless and terrified. But you need to come to Memorial right now. Your husband. He just brought an emergency admit in. When I saw who she was, I nearly dropped the chart. Is he hurt? I asked, my grip on the wine glass threatening to shatter the stem. No, he's fine. Just come. Please. Use the loading dock entrance. I'll leave it unlocked. I drove through the city like a woman possessed. The windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the deluge. Every red light felt like a personal insult. My mind raced through innocent explanations. Maybe he had a car accident on the way to the airport. Maybe he helped a stranger. But the dread sitting heavy in my chest told a different story. It felt cold and slimy, like a reptile coiling around my heart. I parked the Range Rover in the shadows of the loading dock. I slipped inside the sterile white hallway, the smell of bleach and sickness hitting me instantly. I followed Sarah's text instructions, moving like a ghost through the service corridors until I reached the waiting area of the emergency department. I stopped dead behind a large ficus plant. Grant was there. My Grant. But this was not the composed executive who navigated boardrooms with icy precision. His slate gray suit jacket was gone. His white dress shirt was untucked, the top 3 buttons undone, revealing a chest heaving with panic. He raked his hands through his hair, pacing the linoleum floor with a frantic energy I had never witnessed in 8 years. He looked devastated. He looked terrified. He looked like a man whose world was ending. A doctor in blue scrubs pushed through the swinging doors. Grant lunged at him. Doctor, is she okay? Is the baby okay? Grant's voice cracked, a sound so raw it made me flinch. Mr. Anderson, please, calm down, the doctor said, looking at his clipboard. We managed to stop the bleeding. Your wife is stable, and the fetal heartbeat is strong. It was just a scare. My blood ran cold. Wife. Grant did not correct him. Oh, thank God. Thank God. Grant slumped against the wall, covering his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking with relief. Then the doors swung open again. A gurney was wheeled out, headed toward a private room. I leaned forward from my hiding spot, needing to see the face of the woman who had reduced my husband to this trembling mess. The sheet was pulled up to her chin, but I saw the face clearly. The pale skin, the blonde hair matted with sweat. It was not a stranger. It was Tiffany. Tiffany, the 19-year-old daughter of Robert Vance, the CEO of Vanguard Holdings, the girl I had taken under my wing, the girl I had mentored for 2 years, the girl who sat at my dining table and called me her inspiration. She lay there, fragile and pregnant, while my husband, the father of the child inside her, rushed to her side and kissed her hand with a tenderness that shattered my entire world into a million irreparable pieces. I stumbled into the nearest staff restroom, my knees hitting the cold tile floor just as my stomach revolted. I retched into the toilet bowl until there was nothing left inside me but bile and a hollow, aching void, gasping for air. I leaned my forehead against the cool porcelain. A memory flashed in my mind, vivid and nauseating. Tiffany sitting at my dining table just 3 weeks ago, twirling pasta on her fork, looking at me with those wide, adoring eyes. Morgan, you are the sister I never had. I want to be exactly like you when I grow up. I flushed the toilet and dragged myself to the sink. The face in the mirror was pale, but the eyes were hardening. My grief was rapidly curdling into something far more volatile. I remembered how Grant used to talk about her. He would come home from the office, loosening his tie, and complain about the new intern. That Vance girl? She is just a spoiled brat. Useless. I only keep her around because her father signs my checks. It was a performance. A brilliant, calculated performance to throw me off the scent. He had insulted her to hide her. He had made me defend her, made me pity her, made me unknowingly facilitate their affair. I washed my face with freezing water, scrubbing my skin as if I could wash away the humiliation. I slipped out of the hospital through the side exit. On my way to the lot, I spotted Grant's black sedan parked in the VIP section, right next to the reserved spots for surgeons. The arrogance of it made my jaw clench. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo of the license plate in the reserved zone. As I turned to leave, something white on the floor near the reception desk caught my eye. It was a crumpled receipt. I picked it up. It was for a prenatal vitamin prescription, paid for in cash, time-stamped 40 minutes ago. I took a picture of that too. I drove home in silence. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets of Chicago slick and black like oil. Back in the penthouse, I scrubbed the kitchen counter where I had left my wine glass. I changed into my silk nightgown and sat on the velvet sofa in the living room. I did not turn on the lights. I sat there for 3 hours, motionless, waiting like an ice sculpture in the dark. At 5 a.m, the lock clicked. Grant walked in, carrying his briefcase. He froze when he saw me sitting in the gloom. "Morgan, honey, why are you up?" "I couldn't sleep," I said, my voice smooth and devoid of tremors. "I was worried." "You didn't call." Grant sighed, dropping his bag with a heavy thud. "I am so sorry. The flight to New York was canceled due to the storm. The airline put us up in a hotel near O'Hare, but the service was terrible. I barely slept a wink." He walked over to kiss me. The scent hit me before his lips did, beneath his expensive cologne. There was the distinct, sharp smell of hospital antiseptic and the cloying sweetness of Tiffany's vanilla perfume. "You poor thing," I cooed, standing up and smoothing the lapels of his jacket. My eyes darted to his collar. There, faint but undeniable, was a smudge of pink lipstick. "You look exhausted. Why don't you go take a hot shower I can unpack for you? I will even iron this shirt. It looks a bit rumpled." "You are an angel," he said, kissing my forehead. "I don't deserve you." "No," I thought, watching him walk toward the master bathroom. "You really don't." The moment I heard the shower turn on, I moved. I grabbed his phone from the nightstand. His password was still our wedding date, November 12th. How sentimental. I swiped through the screens until I found what I was looking for. It looked like a standard calculator app, but I knew better. Architects use hidden vaults for proprietary designs. Cheaters use them for dirty secrets. I typed in a second code, his birthday. The screen shifted. It was a messaging interface. My breath hitched as I scrolled through the thread. "Grant, hold on. Babe, my wife is watching. I have to play the part. Tiffany, I hate her. I hate that she gets to wake up next to you. When are you going to leave her grant soon? The lawyers are finalizing the offshore accounts. Once I secure the assets from her family trust, I will file. Just take care of our son. 8 weeks is a crucial time. 8 weeks. He was stealing my money to fund a life with his boss's daughter. I did not smash the phone. I did not scream. I closed the app, wiped the screen with the hem of my robe to remove my fingerprints, and placed it back on the nightstand exactly as I had found it. I sat back down on the bed, listening to the water running in the shower. The nausea was gone. The grief was gone. In their place was a clarity so sharp it felt like a blade. Grant wanted a divorce. He wanted my money. He wanted a new life. I decided right then that I would give him none of it. He wanted to play games. Fine. I had designed skyscrapers. I knew exactly how to bring a structure down. You just had to find the load-bearing wall and strike hard. I sat across from Claire in her corner office, the skyline of Chicago sprawling out behind her like a jagged silver chart. Claire was not just my best friend. She was a forensic accountant and the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. I had placed the photos of the text messages on her desk. She did not gasp. She did not offer sympathy. She simply adjusted her glasses and opened her laptop. First, we secure the perimeter, Claire said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. We need to separate your inheritance and your business assets from the marital pot before he makes a move. If he is planning to file, he has likely already started hiding money. She was right. Within 48 hours, Claire's team unearthed the first anomaly. Grant had made a series of withdrawals from our joint savings account, totaling $200,000 over the past 6 months. He had labeled them as investments, but the paper trail led to a studio apartment in the West Loop. The deed was not in Grant's name, but in the name of his cousin, an unemployed musician who barely had 2 nickels to rub together. He is stashing her there, I said, looking at the property listing. It was a luxury studio, perfect for a mistress to hide a pregnancy. He bought a love nest with my money. It gets worse. Morgan, Claire said, her voice dropping an octave. I cross-referenced his personal spending with the financial disclosures from Vanguard Holdings. There are payments going out to 3 consulting firms, Redstone, Blue Harbor, and Zenith. None of these companies have a physical office. They are shell companies. Morgan. And guess who is the signatory for the bank accounts receiving these funds? Grant? I asked. Grant's cousin again. Claire confirmed. Your husband isn't just cheating on you. He is embezzling from Vanguard Holdings. He is stealing from Robert Vance to pay for Robert Vance's daughter. The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. Tiffany Vance was the ultimate poor little rich girl. Her father, a titan of industry, was notoriously stingy with his children, believing they should earn their keep. Tiffany had an allowance that barely covered her designer handbags, let alone a luxury lifestyle. She needed Grant not for love, but for liquidity. They were 2 parasites feeding off the same host, and now, feeding off me. I hired a private investigator the next day. I needed high-definition proof, not just grainy cell phone pictures. The PI came back with a portfolio that made my skin crawl. There were photos of Grant and Tiffany entering the West Loop studio, photos of them shopping for baby clothes, photos of him handing her envelopes of cash. While the investigator worked, I began the silent evacuation of my assets. I transferred my grandmother's inheritance into an irrevocable trust. I moved the operating capital of my design firm into offshore accounts that Claire set up, structures so complex that Grant would need a team of archaeologists to find them. A week later, I decided to test the waters. We were having dinner at home, a roasted chicken that I had spent 3 hours preparing. Grant was distracted, constantly checking his phone under the table. You know, I said, slicing into a piece of breast meat, I ran into Julie today. You remember her husband, Mark. Grant looked up, his eyes darting to mine. Mark the tax attorney. Yes. I took a sip of water. Turns out Mark was having an affair with his secretary. He thought he was being so clever, but Julie found out. She didn't get mad. She just got everything. Mark is currently living in a motel on Route 66 and facing an audit. Grant's fork clattered against his plate. He reached for his wine glass, his hand trembling just enough to make the liquid ripple. That is terrible, he stammered, his face draining of color. Why are you telling me this? No reason. I smiled, a tight, pleasant expression that did not reach my eyes. Just gossip. It makes you realize how fragile a reputation is, doesn't it? One mistake and a man can lose his career, his family, his freedom. I need some air, Grant said abruptly, pushing his chair back. I think I ate something bad at lunch. He practically ran to the balcony. I watched him go, savoring the panic radiating off him. The final nail in his coffin arrived the next morning. Sarah met me at a coffee shop 3 towns over. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were the prenatal records. The patient name was listed as Jane Doe, but the date of birth matched Tiffany's perfectly, and there, at the bottom, listed as the guarantor for all medical expenses, was Grant Anderson. He signed it, Sarah whispered, looking around nervously. He was stupid enough to put his real name on the financial responsibility forms. Thank you, Sarah, I said, tucking the envelope into my bag. You have no idea what you just gave me. I had the gun. I had the bullets. And now, thanks to his own arrogance, Grant had practically drawn a target on his forehead. It was time to pull the trigger. You know who we haven't seen in a while? I asked, looking up from my iPad over breakfast 2 days later. Tiffany. The poor girl looks dreadful lately. So pale and tired. We should have her over for dinner tonight. A little pick-me-up. Grant choked on his coffee. He set the mug down with a clatter, wiping his mouth with a napkin a little too aggressively. Tiffany, why would we invite an intern to dinner? Morgan, that seems inappropriate. Besides, I am sure she has plans with friends her own age. Nonsense, I replied, buttering my toast with deliberate, slow strokes. She is lonely, Grant. And strategically, it makes sense. I want to bid on the renovation for the Vanguard headquarters next year. Being kind to Robert's daughter is the fastest way to his good graces, unless you have a problem with me advancing my career. No, of course not, Grant stammered, trapped by his own greed. I don't want you to work too hard, but if you insist, I will ask her. The dinner was a masterclass in psychological warfare. I set the table with my grandmother's silver and arranged a centerpiece of white lilies funeral flowers, though neither of them caught the irony. When Tiffany arrived, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. She wore a loose-fitting dress that concealed her waist, but I noticed the way her hand protectively hovered over her stomach. Welcome, darling, I exclaimed, embracing her. I felt her stiffen against me. You look exhausted. Come, sit. I have prepared a feast. I had curated the menu with the precision of an assassin. Every single item was a biological weapon against a pregnant woman. We are starting with a bluefin tuna tartare, I announced, placing the plate of raw, glistening red fish directly in front of Tiffany. It was flown in from Tokyo this morning. And for the cheese course, unpasteurized camembert. It is divine. Tiffany stared at the raw fish, her face turning a shade of green that matched the asparagus. I am not really hungry. Morgan, my stomach has been acting up. Oh, don't be silly. I poured a large glass of Cabernet Sauvignon and slid it toward her. You need to eat and drink. This vintage is 20 years old. It would be a crime to waste it. Just one bite. Tiffany. For me. Grant watched us, his eyes darting between the raw fish and his mistress. He looked like he was about to have a stroke. Morgan, maybe she really isn't hungry. He interjected, his voice high and tight. She is a growing girl. Grant. I shot back, my smile razor sharp. Eat up, sweetie. Tiffany took a tiny, trembling sip of water, ignoring the wine. I really can't drink tonight. I'm on antibiotics. What a shame, I sighed, taking a long sip of my own wine. Well, I have a little something to cheer you up. I reached under the table and pulled out a small, gift-wrapped box. Tiffany's hands shook as she took it. She tore the paper to reveal a pair of hand-stitched leather baby booties. The silence that followed was deafening. I saw them at a boutique today, I said lightly, watching the blood drain from her face completely. Aren't they adorable, I just thought. Well, I have been feeling so maternal lately. I thought maybe you could keep them for someday, or give them to a friend. They are lovely, Tiffany whispered, looking like she might faint. Speaking of friends, I continued, cutting into my steak. I heard the most shocking story today. A friend of mine, a wealthy banker, was cheating on his wife. He thought he was so clever hiding assets, but his wife found out. She didn't get mad. She got even. She triggered a clause in their prenup that left him with absolutely nothing. He is currently working as a barista in Ohio. I paused, looking directly at Grant. Can you imagine being so stupid that you lose a luxurious life for a cheap thrill? Grant was sweating profusely now. Beads of perspiration had formed on his upper lip. He downed his glass of wine in one gulp. That sounds vindictive. He managed to choke out. I call it justice, I said cheerfully. As the night ended, I walked them to the door. Grant went to get the car, leaving me alone with Tiffany for a brief 10 seconds. I leaned in close to hug her goodbye. Take care of your health, Tiffany, I whispered into her ear, my voice dropping to a low, icy register. You look like you are carrying a big secret. And secrets. They have a way of getting heavy. I pulled back and smiled at her terrified face. Drive safe, I called out as she stumbled toward my husband's car, looking like she had seen a ghost, which, in a way, she had. She had seen the ghost of her future, and I was the one haunting it. Paranoia is a slow-acting poison, and I had administered a lethal dose to my husband. Over the next few days, Grant's composure eroded like a sandcastle in high tide. He jumped when the toaster popped. He flinched when my phone rang. One evening, as I arranged flowers in the foyer, he loomed behind me, his reflection in the mirror looking gaunt and gray. Morgan, he started, his voice trying for casual but landing on desperate. Have you heard any strange rumors lately? At the club, or from your friends? I snipped the stem of a white rose with a sharp click. I turned to him, offering a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Rumors about what, darling? You know I don't listen to idle gossip. Unless, is there something you want to tell me? No, just office politics, he stammered, retreating into his study and locking the door. He thought he was safe behind that locked door, but he was wrong. I had installed a pinhole camera in the spine of a vintage encyclopedia on the bookshelf 3 days ago. I sat in the guest room, wearing noise-canceling headphones, watching him on my iPad. It was time to turn the screw. I picked up the burner phone I had purchased with cash at a convenience store 2 towns over. I typed 7 simple words I know whose baby it is. I sent it to Grant and Tiffany simultaneously at 11 o'clock at night. On the screen, I saw Grant check his phone. He went pale. He dropped the device on the desk as if it were a live grenade. A moment later, it rang. He answered it on speaker, his hands shaking. Grant, did you get it? Tiffany's voice was high-pitched, bordering on hysteria. Someone texted me they know, oh my God, is it your wife Grant? I can't breathe. Keep your voice down. Grant hissed, looking at the door. It isn't Morgan. She is clueless. It has to be someone at the office. Did you tell anyone? No, I didn't. Tiffany was sobbing now. Grant, I can't take this. I am scared. We have to tell my dad. We have to go public before whoever this is exposes us. Are you insane? Grant roared, his face contorted with a rage I had never seen directed at his precious mistress. If we go public now, I lose everything. The merger is in 2 weeks. If your father finds out I got you pregnant while I am still married, he will destroy me. And do you want to be poor? Tiffany. Do you want to live in a studio apartment for the rest of your life? You said you loved me, Tiffany wailed. I do, but just shut up and let me think. He hung up on her. I watched him pour a glass of scotch with trembling hands. The rift had opened. They were no longer a team. They were 2 drowning rats clawing at each other to stay afloat. The next day, the guilt gifts arrived. Grant came home with a velvet box containing a diamond tennis bracelet. Just because I appreciate you, he said, avoiding my eyes. Oh, Grant, it is breathtaking, I cooed. I wore it for exactly 2 hours. As soon as he left for a late meeting, I drove to a jeweler in the Diamond District and sold it for $12,000. I added the cash to my escape fund. 2 days later, I walked into the Vanguard Holdings headquarters. I had a meeting with Robert Vance to discuss the new executive suite designs. Robert was a formidable man, but he had a blind spot for his family and his money. I laid out the blueprints, but I kept the conversation personal. Robert, the new layout emphasizes transparency, I said, sliding a fabric swatch across his mahogany desk, which is so important these days. You know, with the economy the way it is, I hear so many horror stories about embezzlement. It makes you realize you really need to watch your finance department closely. Robert frowned. We have strict audits. Morgan, Grant runs a tight ship. Oh, I know he does, I said, sipping my water. But the pressure, it gets to everyone. Speaking of pressure, I saw Tiffany the other night. She seems fragile. I hope she isn't getting mixed up with the wrong crowd. Robert, a girl that young, with that much inheritance, she is a target for manipulative men. Robert's eyes narrowed. What do you mean, nothing specific? I lied smoothly. Just a woman's intuition. She looks like she is carrying a heavy burden. I left his office knowing I had planted a weed that would grow fast. That night, the surveillance feed revealed Grant's endgame. He was sitting at his desk, a light box illuminated beneath a document. He was tracing something. I zoomed in on the iPad screen. It was a loan application for a second mortgage on our penthouse, a line of credit for $2 million. He was tracing my signature. He was trying to leverage our home to pay back the money he had stolen from Vanguard before the quarterly audit next week. He was going to bankrupt me to save himself. I took a screenshot. Go ahead, Grant, I whispered to the screen. Sign it. Dig your grave a little deeper. The following morning, I initiated the physical dismantling of our life, while Grant was at the office, frantically trying to plug the holes in his sinking financial ship. I called a locksmith. By noon, the wall safe behind the Monet painting in our bedroom had been cracked. I removed everything. My grandmother's emerald necklace, the deed to the penthouse, our marriage certificate, and every single bond certificate I had inherited. I packed them into a fireproof briefcase and drove them straight to Claire's house. Before I locked the safe back up, I placed a single stack of Monopoly money inside. It was a petty gesture, perhaps, but I wanted him to feel the mockery when he eventually opened it in desperation. That evening, the sound of the shower provided my window of opportunity. I slipped into Grant's study while he was washing away the scent of his stress. His laptop was open on the desk. He had grown careless, or maybe he simply assumed I was too stupid to understand forensic accounting. I inserted a high-speed flash drive. My heart did not race. My hands did not shake. I felt the cold precision of a surgeon cutting out a tumor. I copied everything: the forged loan applications, the transfers to the shell companies, and the falsified expense reports. I even found the draft of the forged signature he had practiced. I spent the next day binding the evidence into a 50-page document I titled Project Demolition. It was a comprehensive narrative of destruction. Page 1 was the affair. Page 10 was the bank statements. Page 40 was the embezzlement. It was heavy, dense with facts that would send my husband to federal prison for a decade. In the afternoon, Tiffany stopped by. She looked awful, her eyes swollen and rimmed with red. She sat on my beige sofa, twisting a handkerchief in her hands, ostensibly to ask for advice on a paint color, but really to fish for information. "Morgan, I don't know what to do," she sniffled, tears spilling over. "My boyfriend. He is being so cold. I feel like I am ruining his life. He says we have a problem that needs to be fixed." She was looking for sympathy. She wanted me to tell her that love conquers all. Instead, I leaned forward and took her hand, channeling the energy of a ruthless older sister. "Sweetie, listen to me," I said, my voice dripping with faux concern. "If a man calls a baby a problem, he is garbage. But you are young. You have your whole life ahead of you. Don't throw it away for a mistake. If he wants you to get rid of it, maybe you should. A baby is a shackle. Tiffany, it ends your freedom. Do you really want to be tied to a man who treats you like a burden?" Tiffany ripped her hand away, her face flushing with anger. "You don't understand. It is not like that. We love each other." She stormed out, slamming the door. I sipped my tea. I had planted the seed of resentment, and I knew it would bloom beautifully. 2 hours later, Grant came home. He was pale and jittery. "I have to go to Cleveland for the weekend," he announced, not meeting my eyes. "Emergency client meeting. I leave tomorrow morning." I knew there was no client in Cleveland. The anonymous texts had worked. He was terrified, and he was taking Tiffany to a clinic 2 states away to erase the evidence of his infidelity before the blackmailer could expose them. "Of course, darling," I said, standing up to help him. "I will pack your bag." I folded his crisp white shirts with care. I packed his toiletries, and then, right on top of his toothbrush, I placed a brand new box of condoms. Grant froze when he saw it. "Just in case," I said, smiling innocently. "You never know when you might need protection. Grant, the world is full of diseases." He zipped the bag shut with a violent motion, his face turning an ugly shade of gray. He left without kissing me goodbye. The moment the elevator doors closed, the silence in the penthouse transformed from lonely to victorious. I walked over to the desk where the invitation for the Vanguard Holdings 10th anniversary gala lay. I had originally checked the box for "regretfully decline." I picked up a red pen, crossed it out, and checked "accept" with a flourish. I would be there, and I would be wearing red. Grant returned late Sunday evening. He looked like a man who had been hunted for sport. His skin was gray, his eyes bloodshot, and he carried the distinct, heavy exhaustion of a crisis that had not been averted. He claimed the client meeting in Cleveland was a roaring success, but the tremor in his hands told a different story. I knew the truth. The clinic had likely turned them away, or perhaps she had panicked at the last second. Either way, the problem was still growing inside her, and the clock was ticking louder than ever. "I have a surprise for you," I said, handing him a glass of water as he collapsed onto the sofa. "I have decided to join you for the Vanguard Gala tomorrow night." Grant nearly dropped the glass. Water sloshed over the rim onto his knuckles. "What but? Morgan, you hate those events. You always say they are pretentious and boring. You don't have to go. Really, I can handle it alone. It will be crowded and loud." "Nonsense," I replied, walking behind him and placing my hands on his tense shoulders. It is the 10th anniversary, Grant. It is a huge milestone. And since everyone expects you to be announced as the new vice president, I should be there by your side. A supportive wife is a crucial asset to an executive, isn't she? He looked like he wanted to vomit. He knew Tiffany would be there. He knew the potential for disaster was catastrophic. I don't want you to be uncomfortable, he stammered, twisting his wedding ring. I won't be, I assured him, my reflection in the window smiling a cold, hard smile. I am going to enjoy every single minute. The next evening, I dressed for war. I bypassed my usual understated black cocktail attire and chose a floor-length gown of crimson silk. It was the color of fresh arterial blood, the color of warning signs, the color of victory. It was backless, with a plunging neckline that demanded attention, a dress designed to make a woman unforgettable. When I walked into the living room, Grant stared at me, his mouth slightly open. I looked vibrant, sharp, and dangerous. He looked like a ghost in a tuxedo, fading into the background of his own life. The ride to the venue was suffocatingly silent. I stared out the limousine window at the Chicago skyline, watching the city lights blur into streaks of cold gold and silver. I did not speak. I did not offer him reassurance. I simply sat there, radiating a calm so profound it felt like the center of a hurricane. Grant kept checking his phone, wiping his sweaty palms on his knees, unable to sit still. We arrived at the ballroom to a barrage of camera flashes. I hooked my arm through Grant's, smiling dazzlingly for the press. We were the golden couple of Chicago society, the architect and the executive, the liar and the executioner. We navigated the sea of tuxedos and gowns until we reached the VIP section near the stage. And there they were. Robert Vance was holding court, a glass of champagne in hand. Beside him stood Tiffany. She was wearing a pale pink dress that was cut to conceal, loose around the waist but tight at the bust. When she saw Grant, her eyes lit up with a terrifying mix of possessiveness and desperation. She ignored me entirely at first, locking eyes with my husband as if they shared a secret language. She thought she had won. She thought she carried the heir to his heart. Robert. I greeted the CEO warmly, stepping forward and kissing his cheek. Congratulations on 10 years. The room looks spectacular. Morgan, you look magnificent, Robert boomed, clearly charmed. I am so glad you could finally make it. You know my daughter, Tiffany. I turned my gaze to the girl who was sleeping with my husband. I scanned her from her expensive heels to her carefully styled hair, letting my eyes linger deliberately, invasively, on her midsection. Hello, Tiffany, I said, my voice sweet as poisoned honey. That dress is stunning, a bold choice, though you might want to be careful. It looks a little tight around the stomach. You wouldn't want to pop a seam in front of all these photographers. Tiffany's hand flew instinctively to her belly, her face draining of color. Grant made a choking sound next to me, turning his cough into a fake clearing of his throat. Shall we find our seats? I asked, turning back to my husband with a predatory smile. I have a feeling tonight is going to be unforgettable. The ballroom was a sea of black ties and glittering diamonds, a suffocating display of Chicago's elite pretending to care about charity while drinking bottles of champagne that cost more than a teacher's monthly salary. I sat at table 1, my fingers curled around the stem of my crystal flute, but I was not drinking. My other hand rested on my clutch, feeling the hard, rectangular outline of the USB drive inside. It was lighter than a lipstick, yet it contained enough explosive material to level this entire room. Robert Vance took the podium, his voice booming through the surround sound system. Tonight, we honor a man whose vision and fiscal discipline have guided Vanguard Holdings to its most profitable quarter in history. Ladies and gentlemen, our Chief Financial Officer of the Year, Grant Anderson. The applause was thunderous. Grant stood up, buttoning his tuxedo jacket with a trembling hand. He looked down at me, forcing a smile that did not quite reach his panicked eyes. He leaned in to kiss my cheek, a cold, dry peck that made my skin crawl. As he walked toward the stage, the spotlight followed him, leaving me in the shadows where I did my best work. I stood up smoothly. To the people at our table, it looked like I was heading to the powder room. I glided through the darkened periphery of the ballroom, moving not toward the restrooms, but toward the elevated audio-visual control booth at the back of the hall. The technician, a cynical man named Dave, whom I had paid $5,000 in cash 2 days ago, saw me coming. He did not say a word. He just slid his chair over, making space for me at the control board. From this vantage point, I had a perfect view of the carnage to come. I looked down at the front row. Tiffany was standing, her hands clasped over her heart, gazing up at Grant with an expression of pure, unadulterated adoration. She looked like a teenager at a rock concert, completely oblivious that the stage was actually a gallows. On stage, Robert Vance was not finished. He put a hand on Grant's shoulder. And because of his exemplary service, it is my honor to announce that effective immediately, Grant will be stepping into the role of Executive Vice President. The crowd gasped and cheered. Grant looked stunned. This was it, the pinnacle of his career, the moment he had sold his soul for. He stepped up to the microphone, the golden trophy gripping tightly in his hand. Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Grant's voice quavered, amplified across the silent room. I am humbled. I didn't get here alone. I want to thank my wife, Morgan. Morgan, you are my rock. Your support means everything to me. I love you. Bile rose in my throat. The audacity of his lies was almost impressive. He was thanking me while paying for his mistress's apartment with my inheritance. I pulled out my phone. The screen glowed in the darkness of the booth. I opened my encrypted messaging app and found Claire's name. I typed 2 words. Start it. Somewhere across the city. Claire hit the execute key on a court order she had pre-filed with a sympathetic judge. In that instant, every bank account Grant Anderson possessed, joint, personal, and hidden, was frozen solid. His credit cards were now useless pieces of plastic. He was destitute, and he did not even know it yet. I looked at Dave, the technician. He looked at me, his finger hovering over the input button for the massive LED screen that spanned the entire wall behind the stage. Do it, I whispered. Dave pressed the button. The giant screen, which had been displaying a tasteful loop of the Vanguard logo and Grant's professional headshot, suddenly glitched. The image distorted, pixelated, and then went black for a heartbeat. A low, electronic hum buzzed through the speakers, cutting through the applause like a knife. Grant paused mid-sentence, looking confused. He turned around to look at the screen, just as it flickered back to life. But the Vanguard logo was gone. The screen did not stay black for long. It flickered back to life. But gone was the polished corporate montage of skyscrapers and handshakes. In its place, projected 30 feet high for the cream of Chicago society to see, was a grainy black-and-white medical image. It was a fetal ultrasound, dated just 3 days ago. The text at the top had been enlarged and highlighted in neon red Father Grant Anderson, Mother Tiffany Vance. The silence that followed was heavy, instantaneous, and violent. It was broken a second later by a collective gasp that sucked the oxygen right out of the ballroom. Grant stood frozen on stage, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. The microphone slipped from his sweat-slicked fingers and hit the stage floor with a deafening, high-pitched feedback screech that made half the audience cover their ears. It isn't. This is a mistake, Grant shouted, his voice cracking without the amplification, sounding small and pathetic. But the slide changed. Now, towering over him, were screenshots of his text messages from the hidden app. The bubbles were crisp and clear, ensuring even the people in the back row could read his betrayal. Robert is just a senile old man. One message read, sent from Grant to Tiffany. I will bleed the company dry. We take the inheritance, and then I divorce Morgan. We will be set for life. The old fool suspects nothing. A piercing scream tore through the room. Tiffany had snapped. No, no, that is private. Stop it, Grant. Do something. Tell them to stop. She hiked up her pink dress and tried to scramble onto the stage, desperate to cover the screen with her own body. But the security team, whom I had specifically instructed earlier to watch for unruly guests, intercepted her. 2 burly guards grabbed her by the arms, restraining her as she kicked and wailed. Let me go! My father owns this building, Daddy. Daddy, tell them, she shrieked, looking toward the front row. But her father was not looking at her. The final slide had just appeared. It was the kill shot. It was a complex Excel spreadsheet, simplified for the audience with bright red arrows. It showed a direct money trail $2 million embezzled from the Vanguard Operational Fund, flowing into 3 shell companies and exiting as payments for a West Loop penthouse, a Porsche Cayenne, and luxury maternity care, all for Tiffany. In the front row, Robert Vance turned a shade of purple I had never seen on a human being. He clutched his chest, his legs giving out beneath him as he collapsed back into his chair. He did not look at his daughter with concern. He looked at her, and then up at Grant, with eyes full of a pure, molten hatred that promised total annihilation. You dirty thief. I treated you like a son. Robert wheezed, his hand shaking as he pointed a finger at the stage. On stage, stripped of his dignity and his future, Grant frantically scanned the darkness of the room. He was looking for a lifeline. He was looking for me. His eyes finally found me standing near the audio booth, bathed in the soft glow of the emergency exit sign. I did not look shocked. I did not look sad. I stood with my arms crossed, a statue of judgment in a red dress. Grant locked eyes with me, his face a mask of terror. Morgan, please. I slowly uncrossed my arms and raised my untouched champagne flute toward him. I tilted my head and offered him a smile that was colder than the grave. Cheers, darling, I mouthed, just as Grant took a step toward the edge of the stage. Perhaps to beg, perhaps to run. The double doors at the back of the ballroom burst open with a crash that rattled the chandeliers. Federal agents, nobody move. The shout echoed off the walls. A team of officers in tactical vests swarmed the room, marching down the center aisle with handcuffs already drawn. Claire had timed it perfectly. The chaos was absolute, and I drank it in like fine wine. The agents moved with brutal efficiency. They yanked Grant's arms behind his back, and the sound of the handcuffs clicking shut echoed through the stunned silence of the ballroom like a gunshot. Flashbulbs erupted in a blinding staccato, capturing every second of his humiliation. He looked wild, his hair disheveled, sweat dripping down his face as he scanned the crowd for a savior who did not exist. Morgan. Please tell them, Grant screamed, his voice cracking as the agents shoved him toward the stairs. Baby, I can explain. It is all a mistake. Don't let them take me. I did not move. I watched him writhe like a worm on a hook. But the drama was not finished. Near the front row, Tiffany threw herself at her father's feet, grabbing the hem of his tuxedo trousers. Daddy, you have to stop them. Grant is the father of your grandchild. Do something. Robert Vance looked down at her. His face was not the face of a father anymore. It was the face of a CEO cutting a liability. He drew his hand back and slapped her across the face with a force that knocked her to the ground. The sound was sickening, a wet, heavy thwack that made the entire room flinch. Don't you dare touch me, Robert hissed, his voice shaking with rage. You are no daughter of mine. You are cut off. No trust fund, no allowance, no inheritance. You are dead to me. Do you hear me? Dead Tiffany curled into a ball on the red carpet, sobbing into her hands. abandoned by the two men she had relied on to carry her through life. She was no longer the Princess of Chicago. She was a pariah, a punchline for the morning tabloids. I walked toward the edge of the stage where the agents had paused with Grant. I signaled for them to wait a moment. They obliged. Grant looked up at me, hope flickering in his terrified eyes. "Morgan, thank God," he panted. "Call Claire. Get me a lawyer. We can fix this." I leaned in close, so close I could smell the fear radiating off him. I brushed a stray hair from his forehead with a tender touch that belied my words. "You always said you wanted a smart wife." "Grant," I whispered, my voice smooth and deadly. "You wanted a woman who could help you climb to the top. Well, congratulations. You have her. And she just put you in federal prison." I reached into my clutch and pulled out a thick envelope. I tucked it into the breast pocket of his tuxedo, right next to his heart. "Those are the divorce papers," I said, stepping back, "and the notification that I have purchased the debt on the fraudulent loan you tried to take out against our home. You don't owe the bank anymore. Grant, you owe me, and I collect with interest." I nodded to the agents. "Get him out of here." The aftermath was exactly as Claire and I had calculated. The trial was the sensation of the year. With the evidence from Project Demolition, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Grant was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for embezzlement, fraud, and corporate theft. His career was not just over, it was incinerated. Tiffany fared no better. Disowned and destitute, she was evicted from her luxury apartment within a month. The last I heard, she was living in a cramped walk-up on the edge of the city, waiting tables at a diner to support the child she had tried to use as a bargaining chip. The social circle that once fawned over her now pretended she did not exist. As for me, I purged my life. I sold the penthouse for $4 million. I did not want the marble floors or the view of the lake. They were tainted with memories of a lie. I took the proceeds, combined with the settlement I wrung out of Grant's remaining assets, and expanded my design firm. We opened our first European branch in Paris last week. I sat in seat 1A of the Air France flight to Paris, watching the lights of Chicago fade beneath the clouds. The flight attendant placed a crystal flute of vintage champagne on my tray table. "For you, madame," she said with a smile. I looked at the diamond ring on my left hand. For 8 years, it had felt like a trophy. Now, it just felt heavy. I slowly slid it off my finger. It caught the cabin light, sparkling one last time. I dropped it into the champagne flute. It hit the bottom with a soft clink. I lifted the glass, drinking the golden liquid until it was gone, leaving the ring sitting alone in the empty vessel on the tray. I felt lighter than air. "Keep the change," I whispered to the empty glass. I turned to the window and smiled. It was the first honest smile I had worn in a long time. The revenge was over. My life was finally about to begin. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I hope you enjoyed seeing justice served as much as I enjoyed writing it. Please comment down below and tell me where you are listening from. I would love to read your thoughts on Grant and Tiffany's karma. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so more people can hear this story.